It follows that there is always more than one current definition of what is normal and what is legal, because the person who can come up with what the kafir calls an original idea, or two, thereby ensures a good position in the kafir expert's hierarchy provided he or she is given suitable publicity, and enough of it. However, although the various Ka6R definitions of what is normal and what is legal differ widely, they all have one basic characteristic in common. That is, that they all uphold the kafir view of existence. This means, in effect, that the apparent differences in opinion amongst the kafir experts are only surface conflicts. In fact, they are all agreed when it comes to rejecting the way of the Prophets and affirming the way of the kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system. Kufr is one system. The kafirun appear to be one body, but they are divided against each other. The kafir educational system is used to inculcate and condition the general population with the definitions which have been framed by the kafir experts. The media is used to reinforce and sustain this conditioning. It is for this reason that alternative ways of education, which do not support the kafir view of existenzen, to be made illegal before they can ever become popular. It is a criminal offense in most kafir states for parents not to send their children through its educational conditioning process. Any alternative educational establishment, which is permitted to exist, usually has to teach the national curriculum if it is to survive, and is extremely unlikely to receive any form of government funding. If the local authorities discover families who have slipped through the net, they have wide powers to take their children into what is called care, so that the children can no longer be deprived of their conditioning, since it often happens that the parents who try to save their children from the educational system do not themselves know what the alternative to it is. The task of the care authorities in satisfying the court that the children should be taken into care because the parents cannot cope is made easier. Similarly, the most influential media systems, that is radio and television, are monopolized by the kafir system, that is the Dajjal system. It is a criminal offense in most kafir states to make an independent radio or television broadcast without a license. Only those organizations which support the system, whether directly or indirectly, are likely to be granted such a license. Laying this way, penetrating criticism of the kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system, on a mass basis, is effectively prevented. Instead, limited coverage is given to such extremists, since its effect is to persuade the average viewer or listener that the apparent relative stability of the kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system, is far more preferable than the brave new world envisaged by the angry and inept minority, whose views are presented in the worst possible light on the media system. Naturally, not all of the imperfections of the system can be hidden from everyone, and accordingly, the media system usually presents programs in which it appears not only that these failings have been noticed and are being criticized, but also that something is being done to remedy them. The more established the system is in any particular kafir state, the more people are permitted to criticize it simply because their words will not really change anything. These current affairs programs alternate with dream and fantasy programs, which are usually laced with ever more explicit soft pornography, thereby equating progress and artistic license with the extent to which sexual activity and vulgar language are depicted and used. Having been shocked or lulled by the news, you can then be excited by sports time, or entertained by music and drama time, or captivated by competition time, and suddenly another precious day has gone. The effect of the media system is to make life a cerebral affair. Much of the action goes on in a person's head, via the radio or the television or the computer. So that reality's indeed virtual. It is a form of hypnosis. Everything happens by means of a technological interface. The result of being plugged into the media system for too long is that in the end you will accept almost anything, without actually doing anything about it, provided that your stomach is full, and your BD is warm, and your home is comfortable. The individual in a kafir society is bombarded with so much information by the media system that in the end he or she is usually left feeling completely helpless when confronted with the idea of changing the system, even when he or she has a pretty good idea of how it works. There are many people in today's kafir societies who are not at all happy with the way their lives are being organized, but who feel powerless to change either themselves or their environment. There are also those who, as a result of their educational and media conditioning, accept the world with which they are presented by that conditioning without question. By controlling the educational and media systems, the kafir ruling elite ensure that their definitions of what is normal and what is legal prevail. The people in a kafir state are presented with these definitions from birth to death. Many of them only see what they are told to see. Very few realize how deeply implanted these definitions are in their consciousness, or seek to find the real meaning of existence, which is covered over by these definitions. The result of a kafir education, that is, the view of existence which comes with, and as a result of it, is kufr, what might be called the Dajjal mentality. Ironically but predictably, anyone who disagrees with it is described and dismissed as having been brainwashed. These kafir definitions are not based on an understanding of the true nature of existence. Indeed, they are used to cover up the truth of things. They do not originate from prophetic revelation, which derives from the source of existence and the destination to which all existence returns, Allah. Indeed, it is only by basing one's life on prophetic revelation, that is both one's existential life pattern as well as one's understanding of the nature of life itself. And today, the only prophetic revelation which is still intact and available to the seeker of knowledge is the Quran. That it is possible to cut through the web of kafir conditioning, which covers over real knowledge, that is, knowledge of the real, Allah. In order to really understand existence, it is necessary to be heartwashed. The only way to base one's life on what is in the Quran is by finding a community of Muslims who most nearly follow the example and lifestyle of the people who were the first to base their lives on what is in the Quran and the Sunnah. That is the first Muslim community of Medina al-Munawwara, which means the illuminate place where the life transaction is, who formed round the Prophet Muhammad 1400 years ago. Allah says in the Quran that this was the best community which has ever been on the face of the earth. And since all creation is from Allah, He knows what He is talking about. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad received their knowledge of Allah and of how to live by keeping company with the Prophet Muhammad, whose every action embodied what is in the Quran, whose every word contained wisdom, and whose very presence transformed and illuminated those who were near him. May the blessings and peace of Allah always be on him and them. The transaction of the real Muslim community is the same today. The people in such a community receive their learning and knowledge by the barakah, that is, by the blessing of their leader, who is a man of Allah, and who is guided by Allah. Such a man is called a wali of Allah, that is, a friend of Allah. He loves Allah, and Allah loves him, and the people who also love Allah and whom Allah loves gather round him. There is no competition between the awliya of Allah. Each has his or her own station with Allah. The greater the wallet fear of Allah, the higher his or her station is with Allah. The greatest of the awliya mir and talk with the Prophet Muhammad in the unseen, either in dreams or in vision. They accordingly have an access to the lying life ransaction of Islam, which those who lay claim to leadership, merely by virtue of the fact that they have read more books than anyone else, do not have. Living Islam is not to be found in books. It is transmitted from person to person. However, this transmission is only possible because the Muslims have the Quran, which means the recitation. The key to understanding what is in the Quran is to recite it out loud, neither too soft, not too strong, either in a gathering or alone, with your attention on your heart. The Quran is the uncreated word of Allah. It is the only book on the face of the earth today which has not been written by a human being, but which was revealed by Allah via the angel Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bless him, and grant him peace, who himself could neither read nor write, and which has not been changed, even by one letter, since it was first revealed. Allah has promised that the Quran will be preserved intact until the end of the world. In the light of the Quran, the definitions of the kafir experts are seen to be what they are, often ignorant, often limited, and often inaccurate ideas, based on speculation and without certainty. The contents of the Quran can be used to ascertain the accuracy of any statement, since the Quran is the definitive collection of statements on the true nature of existence, coming as it does from the source of all existence, Allah. Some of the more enlightened and sincere scientists from the high-tech north are now discovering whatever they have accurately discovered is corroborated by what is in the Quran revealed more than 13.5 centuries ago, and further, that there is much in the Quran which they have not yet discovered, and which they can never hope to discover, since their methods are too gross and clumsy and misconceived to make such discoveries. Everything in creation has meaning, but the kafir definitions often obscure and cover over what this meaning really is. Since the kafirun have no certainty but only speculation, their definitions are forever being redefined. The kafir experts cover up the inadequacy of their definitions by grandly stating that the reason why these definitions are changing is because they are continually evolving and progressing, not because they are inadequate and misinformed. A leading proponent of the Big Bang theory was once asked what there was before the Big Bang took place. He replied that there was an unwritten agreement amongst all scientists not to ask that question, let alone to attempt to answer it. The truth behind this unwritten agreement is that they all know that if they admitted their ignorance, then they would lose their professional tithes and their salary and their reputation. The best of them know that if they really wanted to discover the true nature of existence, then they would have to leave their laboratories and seek out a man or woman of Allah. That is, a person with real knowledge. One of key speculative theories of the present, so-called civilization, is the Darwinian theory of evolution. The conceptual framework of this theory has been borrowed by most kafir theorists at some time or other to support their ideas. Basically, the theory is used to further the kafir doctrine of progress and development in all spheres of activity. Any course of action or any development in technology, for example, which on the face of it appears to be clearly suicidal, the atomic bomb, for example, can always be validated by claiming that it is what has evolved from what came before it, and that therefore, it must be better. The part of Darwin's theory which has received most publicity is the proposition that man is not descended from Adam, but from the apes. We learn from the Quran that the opposite is the truth. All mankind comes from Adam and Eve, despite what the kafir geneticists may say. There was a people in the past who rejected the messenger whom Allah had sent to them, and who, instead of following the life pattern which he had brought, lived like animals. As a result, Allah turned some of them into apes, and some of them into pigs. When Allah wishes something to happen, He says, "Be," and it is. Allah says in the Quran that a people who do not follow the prophetic life pattern destroy themselves. Even a cursory examination of today's present kafir societies plainly proves this to be the case. These kafir societies are not evolving and getting better. They are getting worse as they disintegrate. Everything in existence is subject to birth and death, and to growth and decay. When the present kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system, disintegrates and finally collapses, the survivors will have no option but to embrace Islam, if they have not already done so. The Prophet Muhammad, may the blessings and peace of Allah be on him, said that there would not be an age which was not worse than the one before it, until the end of the world. If anything, therefore, the world and what is in it is not evolving, but rather devolving. It is approaching its end. The Prophet Muhammad said that you should not be children of this world, but rather, children of the next world, because this world is leaving you, and the next world is approaching you. The kafir experts who supply the official definitions of what is normal and what is legal are incapable of giving this kind of advice, simply because they are totally unaware of the true nature of the journey which we all have to make, willingly or unwillingly. They do not know from where they come, and they do not know to where they are going, and their paltry definitions amply reflect their ignorance. Surely we come from Allah, and to Allah we will surely return. The end to which such definitions are used is not to further man's understanding of the nature of existence, but is rather population manipulation and control in the producer-consumer process. These definitions are used, in effect, to program and condition people into accepting this process as being the meaning of their lives and the reason for their existence. Allah says in the Quran that He did not create man and jinn except to worship Him, as has been seen from the examples of Lord Northcliffe and Ezra Pound. These definitions also provide the means by which the Freemasonic ruling elite can eliminate, or at least control, whoever recognizes the kafir system, that is the Dajjal system, for what it is, and who might disrupt its functioning unless they are stopped by subjecting them to judicial and medical processes, which the majority of the population have been conditioned to accept as legal and normal. The kafir experts who frame and sustain these definitions are clearly identified by the descriptions contained in the Quran as being mufsid, meaning those who corrupt. That is, the people who say they are putting everything right, when in fact they are only creating disruption, division, and dissension. Thus, although the actual word Dajjal does not appear in the Quran, the activities of Dajjal, the lesser and ultimate expression of kufr in the creational process before the end of the world, are clearly indicated and identified. The kafir system as a whole, with all its interlinking subsystems, all controlled by their so-called experts, and the Prophet Muhammad said that kufr is one system, is Dajjal as a worldwide social and cultural phenomenon. The way in which the producer-consumer process is operated, and the way in which its supporting subsystems are used to control and manipulate the people enslaved by the producer-consumer system, are clear evidence of the takeover, which has been and is taking place by Dajjal as an unseen force. The kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system, dominates nearly all of the countries of the world today, and it can only be a matter of time before Dajjal, the individual, appears. Another example of the manner in which the Dajjal system operates as regards the elimination of opposition by so-called constitutional means is to be found in the manner in which the famous Nuremberg trials were conducted. This particular stage production was perhaps one of the most thoroughly and carefully orchestrated cover-ups in the history of the Dajjal takeover, and cost millions of pounds. Hitler, like Ezra Pound, was well aware of the Freemasons' activities, as were his immediate followers. He instigated a widespread propaganda campaign designed to reveal these activities. He even embarked on the Second Kafir World War. Like Pound, he underestimated the degree of control already exercised by the Freemasons. There was a stage when, partially financed by Zionist financiers on Wall Street, he believed that the American government would be supporting him. So little did he know of takeover, which had been going on in earnest in that country for at least the 50 years prior to the commencement of the Second World War. What Hitler did not realize was he was just the man that the Freemasons were looking for. He had sufficient charisma to attract a large enough following who would be prepared to fight for him.